live broadcast with me, Susan Tehrani, in New York City. First, let's get you up to speed with this hour's headlines. Veteran Democratic political consultant Steve Kramer admits to commissioning a robocall that impersonated U.S. President Joe Biden using artificial intelligence. The calls made to New Hampshire voters in Biden's voice has sparked investigations and backlash from election officials and watchdogs. Russia scoffs the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's planned spring summit to discuss his peace vision with Kyiv's allies, says the idea of peace talks without Russia is frivolous and laughable. At the opening of the UN Human Rights Council, Rights Chief Volker Turk lashes out at what he calls attempts to undermine the legitimacy and work of the UN and its affiliates. More bad news for Nikki Haley. The Koch network has announced it is suspending financial support for Haley in the Republican presidential primary after her latest defeat in South Carolina. The group had spent tens of millions of dollars trying to elevate Haley and prevent the renomination of former President Donald Trump. Hungary set to ratify Sweden's accession to NATO, ending months of delays to complete Sweden's security policy shift. Stockholm abandoned its non-alignment policy in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. All right, our first story really dives into the perils of AI in political campaigns. As a former political consultant for President Biden's long-shot Democratic primary challenger said that he commissioned an AI-generated robocall impersonating the president. Reports say Steve Kramer, the veteran political consultant working for a rival candidate, Dean Phillips, acknowledged that he was behind the call that impersonated President Joe Biden. In a statement and interview to a media outlet, Kramer expressed no remorse for creating the deepfake, in which an imitation of the president's voice discouraged participants in New Hampshire's Democratic presidential primary. The call launched several law enforcement investigations and provoked outcry from election officials as well as watchdogs. Kramer claimed he planned the fake robocall from the start as an act of civil disobedience to call attention to the dangers of artificial intelligence in politics. He compared himself to American revolutionary Paul Revere and Thomas Paine, saying more enforcement is necessary to stop people from doing what he did. Kramer had also said that the idea for the hoax was entirely his own. The plan had nothing to do with his client, Dean Phillips. Phillips and his campaign have denounced the robocall, saying they had no knowledge of Kramer's involvement and would have immediately terminated him if they had known earlier. All right, well, for more on this, we are being joined by Daniel Castro from Washington, D.C. He is the Vice President of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. Daniel, welcome to WION, and thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this is a very important story and something that many have raised concerns about going into 2024. Can you tell us about the kind of threat that artificial intelligence poses to the fairness of U.S. elections after an incident like this one?
Well, the basis of elections is that, people make decisions based on facts. And the problem with these deep fakes are people don't know what's real anymore. It's very easy with only, $50 or less sometimes to make these deep fakes that show politicians doing things or saying things that they never actually said. And so it's really important that as we, enter into these new elections, that people have the right facts in front of them, that they can understand if a candidate did or did not say something. And so I think we've only touched the tip of the iceberg here.
And what kind of corrective measures, in your opinion, needs to be in place to protect against this kind of abuse?
Well, right now, we don't have laws that significantly restrict the ability to use deepfakes for campaigns to create deepfakes and share them online. And right now, they can do it with pretty much no recourse. There are only a few states that have started to pass laws in this area that would make it a crime or make it so that somebody who is affected by this could, get a court order, get it taken down, or seek remedies. We need to have more laws in this space. Right now, there's basically very little enforcement, and it's kind of a Wild West in terms of what people can do.
Yeah, indeed. And we even got, warnings from so many people, including Elon Musk himself as well. Okay, Daniel Castro from Washington, D.C., thank you so much for joining us on WION, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. In the race for the White House, Nikki Haley faced another deep loss in her bid for the Republican presidential nomination on Saturday. This time, she lost by 20 points in South Carolina, her home state. Yet a day after the defeat, Haley campaigned in Michigan, a state that will see the crucial Republican presidential primary on February 27th and March 2nd. Defying calls from South Carolina Republicans to exit the race, Haley traveled Sunday to Michigan, which holds its primary on Tuesday. Speaking in Troy, Michigan, Haley reiterated a key theme of her campaign: the age of both her rival Donald Trump as well as President Biden, who she says are way past their prime. Take a listen.
South Carolina, it's colder. 70% of Americans have said they don't want Donald Trump or Joe Biden in this next election. The majority of Americans dislike Donald Trump. The majority of Americans dislike Joe Biden. 60% of Americans think Donald Trump and Joe Biden are too old to be running for president. Do we really want to have a country in disarray and a world on fire and have our two candidates be in their 80s?
Moreover, despite Haley's loss in South Carolina, she insisted that it's not the end of her story. One of her major donors has now dropped her, which is the Americans for Prosperity, the political arm of the powerful Koch network backed by billionaire Charles Koch. AFP Action said that it still endorses Haley for president, but now its support will only come in the form of words and not cash. On the other hand, Donald Trump's victory in South Carolina was his 5th in 5 Republican nominating contests. The former president has swept every primary or caucus. His performance have left little elbow room for Haley, which was his former UN ambassador. According to his advisors, Donald Trump's campaign plans to treat Nikki Haley as irrelevant. They argue that attacking her further will only drive more coverage of a candidate who has no clear path to the Republican presidential nomination. Instead, they will focus on a rematch with Democrat President Joe Biden. For her part, Haley defiantly vowed to press on to Super Tuesday on March 5th, when voters in 15 states and 1 U.S. territory will deliver 1/3 delegates to the Republican National Convention, which will choose a nominee in July. In the ongoing effort to secure another ceasefire deal in the Israel-Hamas war, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is said to have made some last-minute demands. Israeli delegates who met on Friday in Paris with Qatari, Egyptian, and U.S. mediators say that the Israeli media reported that Netanyahu wants high-level Palestinian security prisoners released in the deal to be deported to Qatar as a precondition. In addition, Netanyahu is not prepared to advance the deal till Israel gets a list specifying which of the 130 hostages held in Gaza since October are still alive. Some unnamed official in these reports accused Netanyahu of trying to ruin the hostage deal to appease far-right elements in his government. They also accused the Israeli leader of not really being interested in another deal. Netanyahu has publicly said Hamas needs to, quote, come down to a reasonable situation for the deal to materialize. He has also said that Israel must go ahead with a planned ground invasion of Rafah, even as mediation efforts are ongoing. The Israeli Prime Minister's office said on Monday that the military has put forth a plan to evacuate civilians in the Gaza Strip. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has warned an all-out offensive in Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah will be the final nail in the coffin. He said Rafah is the core of UN's humanitarian aid operations in Palestine, and an all-out Israeli offensive on the city would be devastating for the over 1 million Palestinians there. Guterres urged a humanitarian ceasefire and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages.
And the war on nature.
An active member of the U.S. Air Force set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy in Washington on Sunday. He was critically injured while declaring that he will no longer be complicit in quote-unquote genocide. The Associated Press reported that the man, whose name wasn't immediately released, walked up to the embassy and began live streaming on the video streaming platform Twitch. Law enforcement officials believe the man started a live stream, set his phone down, and then doused himself in accelerant and ignited the flames. The video was later removed from the platform, but law enforcement officials have obtained and reviewed a copy. The incident happened as Benjamin Netanyahu is seeking the cabinet approval for a military operation in Rafah while a temporary ceasefire deal is being negotiated. Israel's military offensive in Gaza, however, has drawn criticism, including genocide claims against the Palestinians. Israel has adamantly denied the genocide allegations and says that it's carrying out operations in accordance with international law in the Israel-Hamas war. In December, a person self-immolated outside the Israeli consulate in Atlanta and used gasoline as an accelerant. A Palestinian flag was found at the scene, and the act was believed to be one of extreme political protest. The Metropolitan Police Department in Washington said that its officers had responded to the scene outside the Israeli embassy to assist U.S. Secret Service officers. Its bomb squad had also been called to examine a suspicious vehicle. Police said no hazardous materials were found in that vehicle. Israel is facing mounting international pressure as Gaza's suffering persists. A catastrophic lack of food in Gaza means that families are going for days without a meal. According to the British Red Cross, 2.2 million people, the entire population of Gaza, is experiencing food insecurity at crisis level or above. On top of this, the healthcare system is in survival mode, and people lack clean drinking water and proper sanitation. Hundreds of thousands are in makeshift shelters, in cars, or out in the open. Give me a second. The United States government delegation will be in India for the Homeland Security Dialogue with Union Home Ministry officials on the 28th of February. This comes months after American federal prosecutors accused an Indian official of being involved in a plot to kill a Gurpatwan Singh Panoon, branded as a Khalistani terrorist by the Indian government. According to reports, the U.S. government delegation headed by Acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security Christy Canigalo will visit India for the talks with Union Home Ministry officials. Union Home Secretary Ajay Bala will head the Indian delegation. The India-U.S. Homeland Security Dialogue was introduced back in 2010 as a mechanism to implement the India-U.S. counterterrorism initiative. The first HSD was held in May of 2011. Now, according to reports in the upcoming talks, India has prepared several presentations on the issue. That includes asylum status used by criminals, pro-Khalistani carrying out terrorist activities in India, assistance to arrest the attacker of the Indian consulate in San Francisco, the extradition status of Pakistani origin candidate businessman Tahawur Rana, terrorist fugitives, and on terror financial investigations with them. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, has taken a swipe at Prince Harry, accusing him of disloyalty to the Queen of England. Trump declared that unlike Joe Biden, he would not offer any protection to the Duke of Sussex, that is. Trump's remarks unfolded at CPAC, a conference in Washington, D.C., where he addressed conservative supporters. The conference showcased a surge in support for his potential Republican nomination in the upcoming presidential election here in the United States. A day prior to Trump's comments, Prince Harry faced a court hearing over allegations of falsifying immigration documents. And these accusations centered around claims of hiding past drug use, admission of which were made in his memoir titled Spare. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., filed a lawsuit against the prince, who reportedly had the backing of Biden's Department of Homeland Security. However, doubts have emerged regarding the validity of the drug case being used to sell his book. Trump's outrage extended to the Biden administration, accusing them of quote-unquote protecting Harry by keeping his immigration status secret. He emphasized that he wouldn't protect someone who betrayed the Queen, deeming it unforgivable. On a related note, Trump secured victory in Nikki Haley's home state of South Carolina on Saturday, further narrowing her chances of securing the Republican nomination.
Today in South Carolina, we're getting around 40% of the vote.
Okay, let's wrap up in the world of sports for you, where a PGA Tour rookie Jake Knapp has won the Mexico Open after a thrilling